Hello, dental online trainers, and welcome to the Dental Online Training Sharecast. I'm your host, Dr. Dennis Hartlieb. Each month, I'll be talking with dental experts who are doing amazing work in the field of dentistry and talk about how they got to be where they are today, what their influences were, and their journey in the world of dentistry. And as a bonus, I'll occasionally throw in a few of my solo bonding sharecasts, where I share a little of my experience with you about what's going on in my practice and lessons that I've learned along the way. So tune in every other week to hear our latest episode. Hello, dental online trainers. I'm Dr. Dennis Hartlieb, and welcome to another episode of our DOT Sharecast. Today, I am thrilled to spend some time with a dentist that I've gotten to know pretty nicely over the last several years. This is Dr. Taiseer Sulaiman. Taiseer, if you haven't heard of Taiseer yet, you will, because he's something pretty impressive. He is a tenured associate professor and the director of the Advanced Operative Dentistry and Biomaterials Research at the Adams School of Dentistry, which is the University of North Carolina School of Dentistry in Chapel Hill. He has a PhD in materials that we want to talk about. He's got his clinical certificate in operative dentistry from North Carolina, but he got his dental degree back in Iraq. And so he has published, I think you're close to like 100 articles now, Taiseer. So anyone who likes reading about biomaterials, if you want to learn about porcelains, adhesives, Taiseer's name's all over these, and he's just prolific in his research, and he does some really beautiful stuff. He's a recent member to the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry, so welcome, one of my favorite organizations. And I'm just thrilled to have him on with us today. So Taiseer, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Dennis. I'm honored. Thank you very much.
All right, so Taiseer, I want to sort of go way back to the beginning. So I know that your dad is a dentist, and I want to know from like your early childhood, was that something that was like you knew you wanted to do it when you were just a little kid, or was it something that was slow to come to you?
Well, it was an influence for sure. And, I remember growing up vividly, my dad preparing for his cases, his research, and, being involved with that and seeing that really had an impact and an influence. I'm the oldest of my three other siblings. I have two brothers and a sister, and all of them are dentists as well. And two of them ended up as faculty in Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. And my sister, who was trained at UNC, also went back actually to the Middle East in Dubai, and she's practicing and teaching at the University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And so you can say, I think there was a very strong influence. I think I was never forced to apply to dentistry. It just kind of came in naturally. It was something that we talked about a lot, and I grew a great passion for it. I remember all I wanted to be was a surgeon, and I did, as an internship or as a junior faculty rising, I was, doing a lot of extractions and removing a lot of impacted teeth, and I reached to a point where it was, if I really wanted to go down that route, it would be specializing and becoming more of a maxillofacial surgeon than doing these minor surgeries. And so I just, circumstances didn't help. And, I was then married and I had a kid and I needed to, get things going. I always knew I wanted to be in academia. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to do research. And again, having the influence of my father on that was quite immense. And so, the next best thing to me was restorative dentistry. I absolutely loved it. I loved it from day one when we were, carving and waxing and all that. And so I think I had a good hand for it. And I had a good mentor and guidance from my dad. And I was able to assist him even during my high school days and to help out in the clinic and see him in action and presentations and mentoring master students himself as an academician. And so that kind of all blended in towards my goal and wanting to become an academician. I always had the opportunity of becoming a full-time practitioner. I felt I definitely would be more financially stable than in academia.
Right.
But I think it wasn't all about the money. I really it would have been something missing in private practice where I might not have the opportunity as much as I wanted to teach and to do research. I think research was a big component to it because I always admired the educators that were able to present on a stage and show their own research to back up
Hmm.
their claims. And I think that was something that inspired me really and made me determined that I want research as a major component of what I was going to do in the future. And so, yeah, it's many of us are influenced, of course, by by your father, by a relative, by a very close friend, by a mentor, and they really do help pave the way for you, and help achieve your dream and your goal. I think it's fantastic, and I think everyone should have that hero figure in front of them to chase. And it worked well for me, and I think I influenced also my younger siblings, and they went through the same path. And now I have my son who's a freshman in college and trying to become pre-dental and go through dentistry as well. So yeah, there's definitely something in the blood for that, for sure.
Now, your dad had an interesting path. He was practicing in Iraq and
Yes.
then had a calling to head to the United States and head to Iowa of all places.
Of all places.
Yeah,
Well,
so
the University of Iowa is a phenomenal dental school.
it is.
Uh, and it had, over the years, just wonderful educators. And I think he really wanted to be mentored and trained by the very best in the discipline of operative and restorative dentistry and also biomaterials.
How long was he
Um,
practicing when he
well,
then
I
went over
think he
to?
was about when he left. Let's see, about 7, 8 years.
Okay,
So
so
he was part of the founding members of the dental school at the hometown in Mosul.
hmm.
But it was it's a the country then was very driven by sending their very best to the greatest universities. So he was sent to the University of Iowa. And again, that is where I grew up in Iowa City, Iowa. So it was a wonderful childhood, wonderful experience. Again, I was from those early from that early age, I was attracted to, accompanying my dad on the days off of school to go to the dental school, for example,
Yeah.
and watch what he did and saw a lot of the research that he did. I remember a big component of what he did at the time had to do with lasers, and I was fascinated by it. And so that really had a huge impact on what I wanted to do in the future. And he fast forward many years ahead when I was in my teens and late teens. I He had the opportunity of becoming the dean of the dental school back in his hometown. And I think it was again his calling, after he completed two master's degree and a PhD from the University of Iowa, and had the opportunity of again practicing there and teaching there. He decided to make the decision to go back and to serve his town and his people. And we went back there, and I was very fortunate to get accepted into the dental school there. It was not easy. It's one of the most competitive schools to get into.
How old
And
were you, Taiseer, when you went back to Iraq? How old
oh,
were
I
you?
think about 15, 16, around that age.
So,
So I
so
had some
you're in
time
high
to
school.
prepare.
You're in
Yes.
high school. Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? So I haven't gone through this. What's it like when you're not only to change a school, but to change a country, and especially a country so markedly different, I think, probably from the
Yeah.
U.S. and Iraq. What was that like?
I think it's it was definitely a significant change, as you mentioned, but I think it had to do with how you were raised and the impact of the teachings at home and the culture and the language. And I think all of that was embedded very well into us. It was just me and my younger brother at the time. We never stopped studying the Arabic language. My father made sure that we had the entire curriculum for elementary school
Mm.
and forward to study. It was something that I really disliked, but because I'd see my friends
Right.
outside playing, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to head out and play. And this is back in the '80s, and
Yeah.
it's we didn't have anything but to finish our homework and go outside and play.
Sure.
So,
Right.
but it was something that, again, I didn't understand at the time the importance of it, but then it played out beautifully when I did make that transition along with the family going back. I didn't have any issues blending in to the late high school days there, and going into dental school. It's a different system. You would have to finish 12th grade, and there's no undergrad. It's a 5 year, it's a 6 year program with a mandatory internship, the dental program there. And so you get in by achieving the highest grade. It's not like an interview based kind of scenario. It's really based off of the
Pure
GPAs. And
academics.
so you would have to, I can give you out of a percentage. I think it was like 97% and above in order to get in. And that means you would ace all your exams, and there was a final um, just a final exam for every subject that you would take at the end of the year of the 12th grade. And that's how you would that was a nerve-wracking experience, because if you don't make it or you don't score that high, you can lose your chances. And there was an opportunity to repeat the year, to have a second try, if you will. And but yeah, I got very, very high grades. I studied a lot. And I think, again, it's going back to just having a goal and a dream to become something. And I understood what it required and what it took, and I fought for it. And I was, again, one of the top three students that were on the list of acceptance. You have thousands of applicants from all over the country, and so it was fantastic. I went in there knowing what I wanted to do, and again, having a head start. And I've always had a love for carving and waxing and doing things like that. And again, assisting my dad in his practice. And I was able to, again, that head start really helped. I was, ahead of the students and of my class, and I was able to assist others when they needed help. And that gave me more and more practice. And the dental school there, the mentality in the most countries in the Middle East is, compared to the U.S., it's more military style of teaching.
What do you mean by
I
that?
Well, I compare it to the teachings of in academia, to when I hear my mentors here talk about education in the '60s and '70s and how
And even
things
in the
were.
80s, I can tell you at
And even
Michigan,
in
it
the
was
80s,
very,
probably. Yes, yes. And being at a traditional school like UNC, I mean, we had a lot of those, again, military style of educators. And, it's unfortunate that we don't have that these days. And I think that built in a very defined discipline. Uh, I wasn't offended by any negative criticism that was thrown to me at all. Just made me work harder. I try to avoid negative criticism much as I
sure,
can,
of
which
course.
which at the end result helped me become better. So instead of just starting off from the basics of dentistry and dental anatomy, instead of carving or waxing one tooth, I would do 10.
Right.
I wanted to, repetition was very important to me. And again, having my dad as a mentor figure would always tell me, if you want to get better at this is how we grade, this is how we look at things. And he would give that to any of the students asking them. But I just kind of had that, more focused, mentorship. And it
Was your
was,
dad then one of your instructors, one of your professors when
he
you were in
was,
school
he
too?
was, he tried to avoid that as much as he can. He didn't want
Yeah,
anybody to, it was just for protecting me more than anything
sure.
else. But I remember he was one of my instructors in operative dentistry, and during my third year. And we had the preclinical courses with him. And of course, in the clinics, he would also come in and supervise and help out. But he would always say, hey, go find somebody else he would never grade my work at all.
Sure.
He would have somebody else do it, just to avoid any conflict there. But
Did
but
you call him Dr. Dad or Professor Dad?
oh, yeah, yeah, it was Dr. Sulaiman for sure. I mean, yeah, he's again, there were red lines and I never crossed them and I never
Sure.
dared to. And it was increased responsibility in a way because I didn't feel as free as other students.
Oh, I bet.
I couldn't do anything. I wasn't a crazy kid going up or doing anything crazy per se, but it was I always had, it was a very strict disciplined life that I was living in. And whatever you do, you got to be careful because it's not just your reputation, it's your reputation
Right.
of your dad and your family, and
Hmm.
those things in that parts of the region play a huge role. And if you had a kid or a child that was misbehaving, it can reflect negatively, and the society there would speak of it. It's very focused and under the microscope, especially him holding such a high position in
Sure.
the city and the university. It magnified things and it put a lot of pressure and stress on me.
I bet.
And it was, I think it just, kind of, it helped, really did. I mean, it always uh, allowed me to hold myself to very high standards and early on. And I think that's reflecting, on who I am today. And I think it's very important to set those standards and to make sure that you follow them.
I remember I went to Michigan for dental school, and I remember walking to the dental school my very first day. It's a day that I will always remember. It was a very important day to me. I always wanted to be a dentist. I think someone like you. What do you remember when you first your first days at the dental school? And now you're in dental school. You've made it. What do you remember?
Well, it's again, I think it was a very focused approach. I wanted to, they had a system there that was quite unique, where if you were in the top 10 a student graduating, you would automatically receive a hiring as an instructor at the dental school moving along forward. And
Okay.
the top 10 or even the top five then would be qualified for a scholarship as well. And so there were incentives to push students to do better.
Mm.
Going in, I remember the first couple of years, I just wanted to be in the top 10. I think I was ranked around number 6 or 7 at the
And
time.
it's
And
purely academic for the first couple of years. It's your basic
yes,
sciences.
yes. So there, there. So this is, now it's a whole picture to me. I didn't understand how things were at the time, but now having the opportunity of for being educated in the Middle East and in Scandinavia and then in the U.S., it really blended well together and kind of helped me sculpt who I am today. And I think what understanding that you wanted to be one of the top tier students in order to continue in academia was quite phenomenal. I think it pushed many students. There was about 100 in the class to compete with one another, and that competition was always healthy because you're always striving to become in the top 10. And when you look at the curriculum and how it was mostly a kind of a British based style of education.
Okay.
And it's changed over the years. I mean, they've blended in curriculums from multiple other countries in Europe, the US, Australia, for example. And so now that everything is very open and available and collaborations are available, I hear from the existing faculty and staff there that they're adopting certain curriculums and styles of teaching, and I think that's wonderful to have the students exposed to all that. But we had very strict faculty. Starting off with basics of dentistry. I think the first couple of years were kind of basic science, if you
Hmm.
will. And so I see my son going now through undergrad, and I just feel like 4 years, he's got so much time in his hand. And I'm like, what have we gotten into here? Can't you just finish it in 2 years and move along into a professional school if you wanted to
Well,
become
I
a
was going to
doctor or a
ask you
dentist.
that. Given the sort of the system, and I was just talking to a colleague of mine who's a fellow, Gary Stafford at
Yes.
Oregon, and we had conversation would dentistry be better off if we got people into dental school sooner? Because there's so much to learn. When I was in school, I had to learn gold, I had to learn amalgam. We were just learning about composites. We were in PFMs. We didn't have all the materials. We didn't have the cements. We didn't have the adhesives, right? All these things, dental implants. And are we doing a disservice for our students that we're not giving them enough time to learn the information that's now available in dentistry? And I do wonder, so would we be better off if it was, a elongated 6-year dental program where the first 2 years were basic science, and then we could get people in to really start doing the dentistry stuff? I'm curious your thoughts.
No, I think it's a driving factor in recent modern days. I think it's important to again, a lot of life progresses and technology progresses at a very fast pace, and education might not progress as fast as that.
For sure.
And style of teaching and style of education might not progress. And so you feel like now there is some kind of disconnect that's happening between the generation of students at in their mindset and their age going in. Everything wants to be done at a faster pace. Just give me
Mhm.
the outcome. I want to go to the next phase, and that patience does not exist anymore. And I think by having a student go through 4 years of undergraduate, and a lot can happen during this 4 years where you have very well driven, talented candidates to become future doctors and dentists and pharmacists lose interest within the first couple of years. Maybe in their third year, something happens in their life that turns things around, or they realize that this is not the profession that I want anymore. And you just lost a wonderful talent that could have been a phenomenal clinician and provider for their community and for their city and state. But you just lost their interest because it just takes so long, to graduate now in 8 years. Now, I'm just talking about the process. I'm not talking about dentistry and dental education. That might be a different conversation, because the question is now, is 4 years enough for dentistry?
Right.
If you look at, and we can talk about that later, but as an undergrad, I just feel like, these students are so bright and so smart that, if you gave them that 4 year curriculum in 2 years, they would get it done. And they would
Right.
get it done with great certainty and accomplishment. It's not just passing through it very quickly, but then you drag it along, and there's multiple things that are related to that, and I'm sure tuition is one of them.
For sure.
But I think when you ask someone, it's like, I would love to go into dentistry, but I see, that it takes about 8 years, and I'm in this much debt, and then I might do a specialty program, and they calculate the number of years. The mindset of the students at this age when they're making that decision is different than the mindset of someone in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
For
And
sure.
so the patience and the tolerance and the attention span is it's a lot less right now. And so it's faster, it's quicker, moving at a faster pace. And so that's why a lot see success in IT technology, software engineering, things that can be done because it's such a fast pace. It can be
Right.
accomplished at a faster pace and a lower cost to them. And so I think we're losing a lot of talent, and whether, in dentistry specifically, and the dental world. 4 years, again, I wish sometimes to extract certain subjects, not being biased to restorative dentistry, but I think there might be loss of focus sometimes, and the students are challenged with so many different subjects, and some of
There's no
them,
doubt.
and you ask them, it's like, what do you want to be when you graduate? And
Right.
80% of them will tell you, I'm going to be a general dentist.
Right.
And so I would love to cater a curriculum focusing on how for them to become a general dentist.
I think
Um,
so difficult. One of the things in the States, and I can't speak for other countries, but in the States, getting an undergraduate degree and living that undergraduate life, there's a certain appeal to that. I mean, I went to Michigan, we had Michigan football, you went to Iowa,
sure, sure.
and so there
Yeah,
is there's a certain funness that
sure.
goes along with getting all that. And so I think you weigh the scales, and I think there's certainly people who are ready for more accelerated, and Marquette has that where you can get in. It's a 6-year dental program 2 years of undergraduate, you do well enough, that gets you, you're automatically
Wonderful.
already admitted into the dental school. And so
That's
that,
wonderful.
yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I think it's a great opportunity. For someone like me, I enjoyed the undergraduate life at Michigan. I did it in 3 years and got in early, but I loved that part of the university experience. And quite honestly, I was too
Sure.
immature
Sure.
probably to get into the professional rigors that would be
Sure.
required at dental. So I do wonder, with everything going on in dentistry, though. I say, I had to learn an inch of material a mile deep. I had to know everything
Yes.
about shrinkage of amalgam. We had to know so much on such a little materials.
Mhm.
Nowadays, they learn an inch deep on a mile of materials. And unfortunately, I think that makes it so complicated for when they graduate and they have to go out and start practicing. And, as an educator, I'm sure you see that. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on what we could do better. And as dentists, any young dentists who are hearing this, what they can do as they're getting ready to make that step from, education into practicing dentistry.
You know, I want to sound optimistic always. So I'm going to say that I think dental education. So if we really focus on dental education in our country here is, I think um, the quality of education is not as good as it was 20, 30 years ago.
Is that
And there are
because of not enough funding for
yeah, yeah.
faculty?
There are multiple reasons. And funding is a huge part of that. And
Mhm.
you can't rely on part-time or adjunct, faculty that share that whatever spare time they have. I think they're phenomenal. They're great support, but you have to have core faculty, and like I did, just start from scratch and get raised into dental academia and start as a junior faculty and then mid-career and then you become a professor at the end. And so to find those that are first of all very well qualified to go through that route and to continue that route, it's very challenging. And funding is a major one of the major reasons for the lack of it right now, because you just simply can't afford someone who is very talented in teaching and in research to stay in dental academia. It doesn't make sense when you can earn 3 times more working at the private practice down the street in
Yep.
this your same town and working 3 or 4 days in that clinic as an associate, not even as an owner.
Hmm.
And so I think money has a major impact on that. And that's what I always say, is that we have the best educators outside of academia.
Yep.
And that's really unfortunate, but there's no way to afford them in academia. And plus, it's not for everyone. Also, I mean, you would hear many that say, I would sacrifice money, but I can't deal with the politics. I can't deal with the bureaucracy of things. And so that's also something that you have to learn, and you have to adapt to. It's not easy at all. And then you have, when you're talking about young graduates, the amount of debt that they're in, it simply doesn't pay off if you're in
No.
academia, unless dental schools provide incentives where they are willing to pay off that debt for a certain amount of years of service. I think that can be a wonderful trade-off. I see students in their third and fourth year in the clinic floor, and I'm like, you're talented, you're passionate. I see the way you talk to your patient. I see the way that you communicate information to me, to your staff, with your colleagues. I ask them a question, do you like teaching, or do you like, can you see yourself, teaching, for example, this subject, that you're doing,
Hmm.
which is mostly restorative in this case. And they were like, yeah, of course. I mean, I've been a teaching assistant undergrad. I did tutoring. I did this. You can see the passion in their eyes. And then I think in their spring of their senior year, when they start to explore options, or even from the fall semester of their senior year, when they start to explore options, and they see the amount of debt that they're going to graduate with, and they see what the offerings can be from institutes or academia. It's just math. It boils down to math, and it
Right.
just doesn't make any sense. And then you lose them, and they want to come back, but then when you're deep into your practice and you
Life
purchase
happens.
and life happens. It's so hard to leave. It's so
It
hard to
is.
get back into it.
It's interesting. There's all sorts of debt relief, right? You can join the services, you could do public dentistry. There's all sorts of opportunities. It would only make sense that serving in the dental school would be a great way for a young dentist or any dentist who's got debt. And if there could be debt relief, that would be a great way to help populate
Absolutely.
educators. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I had never thought about that, but it's a real
Yeah.
issue. And I mean, I saw it when I was teaching at Marquette Dental School. I mean, I was super blessed when I first started. There was just some great educators, but it became more and more difficult for them to bring, to maintain them or retain them, and then to bring in new
Hmm.
educators. And, I was so fortunate at Michigan. We had such a great staff,
Hmm.
faculty there. And I can see the changes. And just talking to my friends who are in academics, I can see how challenging this is. And unfortunately, it all then there's a lessening of education for the students, which ultimately means there's a lessening of quality of dentistry we're able to provide for the
Sure.
patients, and they're the ones who end
Sure.
up losing the most. And it's just
Yeah.
unfortunate, and I don't see us cycling out of that. It just seems like it's just going to continue on as
No.
it has, unfortunately.
No, you're always going to find someone to fill in a job opening, and it becomes just mediocre levels of and random hirings, and you lose the process of receiving mentorship, going into a program where you're growing, and then you're provided with guidance, and then you're kind of hired now and here dump everything on them and go ahead and do that, and sometimes it's a hit and miss, and most of the time it's a miss. You see extreme failure because that person was just not meant for that kind of responsibility and duty, and it reflects negatively ultimately on the student. And that's why I said the quality of dental education, unfortunately, I don't see it headed in the right direction. And the only way you can overcome it is just by providing better resources and support and funding
Right.
for proper faculty. Um, and I've had I mean, I have colleagues and friends in Europe suffering through the same thing.
I've
Not
heard.
so much in some of the countries in the Middle East. There are other countries that are more flexible in the contract that they have with their full-time faculty, where they are committed to teaching and doing whatever research they can from, for example, 8 to 1 o'clock or 2, and then that's it. And so, or you have a certain number of days where you're committed, and then the other days you can freely go work in a private practice.
Right.
So
So
many
this
of
is
them you would find having being a full-time faculty, academician, but also having a private practice, and that's how they make the ends meet. But when you're trapped, and you're owned completely by the institute, it doesn't allow you. I mean, I've been blessed and very fortunate with speaking opportunities, and probably that's and again, just it's a joy to do it and to have the opportunity to travel and to meet people and to share your information. I think it's fantastic, but not everyone has that opportunity. And if you
right.
don't have an opportunity to work outside, you're stuck with very limited income. And so what do? Either just get the energy sucked out of you where you're not as passionate about teaching anymore and you're very passive in what you do and what you teach, and it's just kind of like another day at school, and the student will pay the price for that, or you end up leaving, and then just kind of having your own going your own way with private practice. And so again, it's quite interesting. I was exposed to three different parts of the world, and from in that context, and it was kind of interesting to see how each country handles dental education a little bit different. um
Well, I want to bring this up. So for those who aren't aware, so Taiseer starts out his life in Iowa, or a portion of it, and then he's back into Iraq and does his dental school training, and then he makes his way over to North Carolina. Right, for your first stop is at North Carolina for your operative
Well, it was
degree.
my second stop. No,
You were
again, I just wanted to highlight that, the dental education was done. 2003 happened, unfortunately, and that's when I graduated. But then we had to leave the country immediately. I mean, but it was just a wonderful experience, because the learning experience. I look at what I did as a dental student and the amount of practice and the amount of training I got, and I compare it to what we have today, it's just no comparison. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that you set an example is removable, prosthodontics, removable dentures. And so, we interview, students here wanting to go into pros programs, and you ask them, fixed and removable, what have you done? And you hear some schools, graduates of schools saying, well, I did 1 crown, 2 crowns. I
For
did,
sure.
three of us, teamed up and
Did a
did one
denture.
denture.
Yeah.
And so it's horrific stories. And then I have a smile in the back and back of my head, I'm smiling. And I'm like, I remember graduating. I did like 17 dentures. I mean, we did our own, cast and
Yeah.
gold work and PFMs, and we did our, and so I think that really built a foundation that I then used, to be successful wherever I was going to go. I just had that strong, solid foundation, which I could not have dreamed of if I had studied in the curriculum that we have today here in the US. It's just because the availability and affordability of dental care, it was free to the public. So you can imagine the wealth of patients that
Right.
you had that were lined up just to get in. And so, you had great, strong, strict faculty with a lot of patients. And so that really built a strong foundation. So I was very fortunate for that experience. We ended up, my father did take on a chair position and in the again United Arab Emirates, and I think my parents wanted to stay in the area, not go too far, but my siblings and I, we wanted to go back to the U.S., and so we spent a short period of time. I spent a short period of time in the United Arab Emirates, again a wonderful, wonderful country that has a phenomenal educational system as well, and to study, to be in academia in the Middle East region, you have to have multiple letters behind your name.
Mm.
It's not like here.
Yeah.
You have to get that verification.
Hmm.
You can't just be a DDS and then be a full-time faculty and retire as a professor like here in the US. It's
Right.
just a different mindset, different educational system. Matter of fact, in dentistry, many countries or many universities in that region would only hire you as faculty if you had a PhD. And so it was kind of difficult because there is really no PhD in dentistry
Right.
in the mindset that we have here in the US. Masters, sure, we would understand. You
Hmm.
get a specialty degree, but a PhD is really research focused. That's the understanding, and it's more basic science. But no, you do have programs in European countries and Asian countries where it is a PhD in a specialty program where you are
Right.
trained clinically and you do a high level research project. And that's the only condition. You cannot get a full-time faculty assistant professor level position on a master's degree. So that's the level that some of these countries in the Middle East require. And so I was an instructor, more of a clinical instructor, not a professor yet, because I didn't have any postgraduate degrees
Sure.
besides the DDS. And so, I remained there 2 years. Wonderful experience because it was in a group practice setting, general dentistry. I was
Hmm.
a group leader or a preceptor, they would call it here in the US. I had, about 40 to 60 students under me, which I was responsible for supervising, and we did treatment planning from A to Z. And we executed a
Fantastic.
lot of cases. We called specialists whenever we needed them. But
Hmm.
again, that was a wonderful experience where I got to polish a lot of my clinical skills in treatment planning. But then something was missing. You need to move on to the next phase, and that's where we decided to go back. I decided to go back to the U.S. and having connections through my dad's days here in the U.S. University of Carolina through Dr. Ed Swift was one of them,
Oh,
and
sure.
and
Yeah.
uh, he opened the door for me, and I was fortunate. I wanted to do restorative prosthodontics. It was a little bit more of a wait to get into the program, and I dreaded removable dentistry, removable prosthodontics, and it was just something I did not want to do. And so we had an operative program at UNC, and
Yep.
was pretty much doing everything Pross did, except, for the very big cases involving dentures. And so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, there you go. I love doing fixed Pross, and I love restoring implants, and I love to do bonding and work on ceramics. And so it was a wonderful program. I was very fortunate to receive mentorship from Terry Donovan, Harold Hyman, Ed Swift, Al Wilder, Ken May. These were all phenomenal educators that put operative dentistry on the map. Yeah,
Yep.
starting off with Cliff Sturdivant, who is arguably the father of modern day operative dentistry, and he had a way of an eye for selecting faculty, and I think he recruited the very best. And it was back in the days where you could be intimidated and really fall in love with a faculty figure and just follow them blindly. Like
Right.
you should come into academia. Yes, sir. I'll follow you in academia. And so he grew them young from the DDS program, something that I really admired and loved. And I was like, wow, imagine the power that you have in the influence
Yeah.
on a DDS student to bring them into the academic world and to train them and to
Mm-hmm.
have them continue. And many of his mentees, if you will, retired from that department after 40 years.
Yeah.
And they started off from the DDS. I mean, that's just mind blowing, something that you can't possibly imagine in our modern day, as hard as you try.
It's like a
Um,
coaching tree in college where you're
yeah,
like well
it's it's a
you know
different
Iowa,
world.
so they have this
Yeah,
Hayden Fry had this incredible coaching tree of other
yeah,
assistants that would then go on to be head coaches and just
yeah,
become
yeah.
excellent. Yeah.
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 And so I think that's what really drew me to that program. And I was very, very fortunate. I did my residency there. I was working on a PhD program as well, which was a program that is initiated from University of Turku in Finland. And the Scandinavian have a phenomenal biomaterials program where their way of thinking is so advanced and way ahead of us here in the US.
Wow.
Very attractive to me, and especially on ceramics. My younger brother actually was there before me, and he was working on implants, and he's like, on ceramics, we have this entire floor that's dedicated to, biomaterials research. And, he's like, you can start the program while you're based at UNC. And actually, it would be a plus that you have a school like UNC that would be collaborating along with you in this program. So I had two mentors from UNC and two mentors from Finland. And my focus was not becoming a material scientist. So I always tell people, don't let the PhD fool you. I'm really no scientist. I think I just I've been practicing for 20 years, and I think the first half of it, I knew how to treatment plan, I knew how to execute, but when it came to material selection and application, I think that was a missing hole. It was a
Mhm.
big hole for me, and it was something missing, and I overlooked it. And then my restorative work failed,
Right.
and my composites would stain and debond, my ceramics would chip, break, and debond, and it was very frustrating. And then I knew that I needed to focus and know more about my materials. And there's a wealth of materials. I mean, just close your eyes and imagine what you have in adhesives and in
It's
cements and
crazy.
composites.
It's
Crazy.
insane.
And so I was like, I need to, and the only way that would again, that kind of disciplined life, I was something I grew up on, and I wanted a structured way of learning and not
Yep.
just reading articles. I could have done that, but I probably
Sure.
wouldn't have been as focused. And so and again, being in academia and wanting to continue in academia, I'm like, I have to get this PhD. I remember the Middle Eastern mindset is that without a PhD,
Yeah.
you're not ever going to get a faculty position. And so that kind of was a driving factor. And I remember my dad also did the same thing. And so I enrolled into that program. I wanted my mentors to be clinicians. And when you jump into Europe and to the Middle East and Asia, you'll have many dentists, clinicians that have PhDs. And it's
Sure.
just different in the mindset than here than compared to North America. And so I wanted, again, the people that were going to mentor me and then going to guide me and supervise me in my PhD track. I wanted them to be clinicians that had research experience. And so my two mentors from Finland were prosthodontists, and they had PhDs. And I think that really helped, again, understand what I wanted to do and then help me get there. And
Now, this is the University of Turku, and I had to Google it because I've never heard of Turku. I don't know anything about
yes,
Finland. And so I
yes,
look on a
it's
map, and
closest city to Sweden.
it is like it looks remote. I mean, it
It does,
looks
but it's not. Look what's across the sea on
well,
the other end,
exact, but it's across the
right?
sea. That's
Yeah.
like that's
No,
like
no,
being
it's a
across
very
Lake
short trip by
Michigan.
boat. It's a very, very short trip by boat, by the way. I've taken that trip. It's a few hours. It's not that far.
It's like traveling
Um,
across Lake Michigan. If I was living on like Western Michigan, want
yes,
to go to
yes.
Chicago, I got to get on a boat to go to Chicago.
Yeah.
It when you were there, so obviously you speak Arabic, you speak English quite well, right? And then now, so what is the language that you're speaking to your mentors when you're over in Finland?
Oh, it's English. It's English. I mean, Finland is such a remarkable place. You, they might come across as shy citizens at first, but you can literally grab anyone from the street and talk to them in English, and they will reply and respond in English beautifully well. And so dentistry there is taught in Finnish language. If you wanted to qualify your degree and practice in Finland, you would have to study in Finland and pass the board exams in Finnish.
Hmm.
And so, but postgraduate studies were in English. And
Interesting.
so the PhD program was fully in English. It was not in the Finnish language. I think it had to do with the licensing process there if you wanted to practice, which I didn't want to do. So I did not
how much
learn.
time did you spend in Finland?
So it was, it was not as long as I wanted to. I was mostly based again because it's a collaborative program. So
Right.
I was actually based in Chapel Hill, and
Okay.
so I would travel there whenever needed, and especially I would travel there to do my laboratory side of things because they
Sure.
had everything
Yeah,
available,
yeah.
and the resources there were phenomenal. And so I'd travel there whenever I needed to, I doing the residency at UNC also had a lot of course credit, and then the European system accepts the American system, and if you had these credits, and so I was fortunate to again get a head start on many of the courses that I did because I've already accomplished and completed them. So they were
Sure.
accredited courses. I didn't have to repeat many things, and so I was really focused on the research aspect of it. And I knew my opportunity to get a full-time position at at any school in the U.S. was linked to me completing the PhD as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
That would have just made me a better candidate for that position.
For sure.
And so I was very dedicated, doing the residency and also doing the PhD. It was, I was working 80 hours a week trying to
Were
get
you
that.
married at the time?
Yes, I was.
Did you have
And
children?
I have two boys, and of course, that wouldn't all be possible without a spouse and wife that
Right.
would support and be there for you. And it's we went through a lot of difficult times. It's
Sure.
especially when you don't have an income coming in, and
Right.
this is where your family comes in to help, and we
Right.
needed that help, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
okay to reach out and ask for that help. And but again, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I knew
Right.
where I was going to head, and at UNC again, being raised under these great individuals and educators, they drew the path. They're like, okay, if you continue here, this is where you're going to end up in the next 2, 3, and 5 years. And so that really helps by having a mentor that can help guide you and also pave the way for you. And so when I did complete the PhD, I finished my residency, and it was time to apply for faculty positions. I got there were three places I was interested in, and two of them got immediate acceptance. At UNC was the only one that I hadn't gotten acceptance yet because they opened up a tenured track position, which was very
Ah,
rare
yeah.
to open up. And to my luck, I think like 60, 70 people applied to it. It was
Of
like, oh
course.
my
Of
God,
course. Of
how am
course.
I? Of course, it's going to be. And it was, but I think what happened was that they knew who I was, and they knew who
Hmm.
trained me, and they knew my passion and what I was going to become. And this is where they invested in me, and it
Right.
wasn't the highest pay compared to the other offers that I got. but it was tenure track. And, to an academician, that does mean something.
Oh,
And that
absolutely.
sense of security, I think if you speak to any full-time academician, they tell you, why are you in academia besides loving to teach and do research, or they'll tell you it's security. That
Security,
sense of
for
security
sure.
was very important.
Yeah.
And so, I took less pay to stay at UNC because I was very appreciative of the mentorship. I love the culture. I love the school. This was my home. I took on the position. There was a very good startup fund that was dedicated, again, that came along with this position. And because of that startup fund, it enabled me to establish the research lab at the school,
Mhm.
and something that was missing. And I saw the other residents in other programs, how they were scrambling during the last couple of years trying to get their research done. They didn't have a place or a house to help complete that. The brains were there, but then the facilities didn't help because the people that ran the research labs were simply not there. They had left the school or retired. And so that was missing, and I was fortunate to have Finland to lean on for that
Hmm.
purpose. But I saw my friends and colleagues were struggling, and so it was a goal of mine to establish a home for graduate students to do their research. And I established a lab, and we're about 8 years, 9 years now, and since its established day of establishment, and we've published over 80 articles, and it's just a wonderful collaboration. I'm not going to take credit for all that work. It's a teamwork. You
Sure.
find the right people. There are people around me that are much brighter and smarter than I am, and I just love to learn and collaborate with them. But when you have the opportunity of a graduate student knocking on your door and you tear on the side of their eye and their graduation is coming up and they don't
Right.
have a project, but to be able to assist and support them and just tell them, relax, don't worry about it, we got you. I think it's just brings a great joy to my heart, and it's been wonderful to collaborate with folks. I have projects with endodontist, prosthodontist, operative,
Right.
pediatric dentist, all over. I mean, if you think about areas of biomaterial, it's just it can collaborate with any discipline in dentistry. Um, but that's only been, it's been it's a small portion of my full a week commitment, about a day and a half. That's not enough, but research is never done during that time. It's always
Right.
done in evenings and
Right.
weekends, and it's
Yeah.
nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah.
I envy sometimes some of my colleagues who are just focused clinicians, and they go into the clinic and go out. Once they're out, besides signing off some of the notes, they really have nothing else to worry about. But research is just non-end. You have, students, residents, other faculty, or other people you're collaborating with, texting you, emailing you, calling you. It's nonstop. But, no one forced me to do it. I just
I, I
passionately love doing it.
I think doing research is like being a farmer. Like
Yeah.
you never get to leave the farm. And
Yeah.
right, it's
Yeah.
always there. There's
Yeah.
always something that needs to get
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And talking to
Yeah.
people who do research, it sounds like that's just their baby is always just sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah. But it's again a small component. I mean, I always explain it as a triangle, right? I have research, but I have patient care. So I see my own patients in the faculty practice. Again, something I truly love and admire. And to me, it's really one of my fun days is to be in the practice where I'm, again, very wet-handed clinician working along with patients and practicing a lot of the things that I talk about. And so I think that's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and kind of um, helped set me aside in a way that when I am talking or presenting, you get that sense of someone who can translate the research world, but also did it with their own hands. And I think that's very, very important to relate with clinicians. And again, I teach
100%.
students at the DDS and graduate level. And if you took one of those elements away from me, I think I wouldn't be as happy.
Yeah,
There'd always be something missing. And it's been wonderful. When I learned about these materials and how to select them, how to apply them, it transformed my clinical practice. I
for
don't
sure.
see my composites debonding or staining as fast. I don't see my ceramics breaking off or debonding, and I think sharing that journey and that experience is what really allowed me to be, to have the opportunity and be requested to speak at multiple stages is because I think the person listening can relate to that experience. And I'm just raising awareness on, listen, you can no longer ignore this third phase of restorative care for your
Totally.
patient, because if you do ignore it, the first two phases really don't matter. Patients don't care how you treatment plan. They don't care how you execute. Showing them line angles and rubber dam
Right.
isolation. They don't care. They want something in there that lasts a lifetime.
Yep.
And I don't think we should. I mean, lifetime is a very big goal to achieve in restorative care, but that's what
Absolutely.
patients expectations are. And so by ignoring materials and material selection and application, it's just it's that's I can be biased to that area, but I think if you really close your eyes and you are a restorative dentist, you would start to conclude this is the most important phase in order to have a successful outcome.
Okay. We talked about the challenges of education these days in dentistry, but the flip side of the coin, Tzier, is then this gives the opportunity for people like yourself who are doing the research, doing the clinical experience to get out there and share their information with a lot more people that you can influence than you can even in a dental school environment. So while I think it's just changed, right? When today in dentistry, at least in the States, and I think probably in Europe as well, so much of what we learn is after we've graduated dental school. And certainly that was for
Mhm.
me, right? What I learned in dental school, I use maybe 5% of that, right, in my practice today. And the ability for people to learn more today has never been better, right? I mean, when I got
Absolutely.
out, there was no Spear Institute, there was no Cois, Learning Center. There was Panky. There was Panky, and then
Hmm.
there was, Dawson was doing some stuff,
Awesome.
Spear and Cois, they were doing some lecturing. But now, even though it can be, a big investment, now we have the opportunity and we have people like yourself who are going out there and teaching us so that we can apply these concepts to our practice in dentistry today. And so that's the flip side, right? And so while maybe we don't have as much knowledge when we're getting out of dental school, and we certainly don't have the experience when we're getting out of dental school, now we have our opportunity to go see Tzier, see him lecture, get his information, and be able to apply that to our practice, which is just so critical in today's world. So, that's the other side of it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can't. Look, I've had multiple opportunities to go full time. Right now, I can go full time in private practice. And again, I would be much wealthy. I would be wealthier than I am right now, but I don't know if I would be as happy
Right.
as I am right now. And so it's really that joy and that fulfillment or that satisfaction is so hard to describe unless you actually do it. I mean, when you impact or you've learned that you've impacted somebody's decision making on something, where ultimately this is you're providing a service and care for another human being.
Totally.
And so you're not just educating a person, a clinician. That clinician is going to go and treat hundreds of patients. And so the
Exactly.
influence of that to me is just beyond a dollar sign. You just can't put a dollar sign to it.
Not at all.
And again, this is something that I grew up on and I was raised and saw, my father in action doing all that. And so I think, and then the impact that you have on your students,
Yep.
and especially when they go into a graduate level, and now I have PhD students as well, and to see that you are opening doors and ways for them and to help them achieve their goal just like others helped mine is quite phenomenal. I'm not a selfish researcher where I'm focused on a specific project and I want others to come help me to get to that project. I'm more like, well, there's this 5 or 6 different ideas that we have. Where do you see yourself interested in researching? And that's how I can gain and attract their attention, because when I do provide that for them, they do it with passion. And that's what I'm
Correct.
looking for. I'm looking
Absolutely.
for someone who passionately does their job, whether it's clinical or whether it's in the research lab. Uh, that's who you want to surround yourself with, because they keep you on your toes. You're always running, and I always tell them, if I see you running, I'm running right beside you, and I'll
Hmm.
never let you on your own. And and again, I think that's what keeps me going, and going back home just feeling happy and satisfied that I've been able to help someone, is it's quite phenomenal. And it's again, I think, uh I've never really thought it would I'd be requested to speak as much as I have been getting these opportunities, but it really helps keep me alive in academia,
Hmm.
stay alive in academia.
Absolutely.
And you speak to any academician, they'll tell you this is the way to go if you wanted to be full-time in academia. And the school and the university is understanding and gracious of providing that time for you to be away, and because you're spreading your research, you're spreading the name of your institute and your team, and that's something that I proudly share and brag about every time that I get the opportunity to be on a stage. And I think that's very important, because at the end you would be attracting someone who wants to go into dentistry or wants to do a specialty program, and then that's how you attract the very best, is and that's how I saw my mentors do it, and I'm just
Hmm.
following their footsteps and that path, and kind of continuing that very strong tradition that we have at UNC. And I'm sure there are other schools that have that same exact tradition.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate growing up. I got to see John Burgess very early in my career, and I just latched
Absolutely.
on to John. And
He rest in
I learned
peace.
so much just from someone who was able to apply the research to the clinical end of things and see how things worked and how things didn't work. And he was really my safety rails as I was practicing, and then through you and Nate Lawson and so many others that are doing such beautiful research. It's for a practicing dentist, it just it keeps us on our guardrails, it keeps us safe.
Yep.
And it's that combination of doing the clinical dentistry and the research and seeing for yourself how it plays out. Then that brings it back to us and allows us to be able to practice dentistry at the highest level we can for our patients. And so,
Absolutely.
you know, I.
Absolutely.
I have so many friends in academics, and I value you all. I think you're
Thank
all
you so much.
angels, and it's
Thank you, Dennis.
the bureaucracy
Thank
of
you.
dental school. There's no way I could manage all that. But and it's interesting. And I've been lucky because I taught for a bunch of years at Marquette, and I've had people come up to me and tell me, hey, I remember when you were teaching this lecture on composites, and I used that technique, and that was really helpful. And I cannot imagine the number of people that you've been able to give guidance, and that you certainly probably aren't even aware, and they may not even be aware that it was you who did it. But there's so much that you've added into these careers of these young dentists, and you should be very, very proud.
I hope so. And again, that's something that really keeps a smile on the face and joy to my heart. It's just a wonderful, fulfilling experience. It's been fantastic, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Tell me, Taser, for dentists who are going into dental school and for those who are sort of going through dental school and graduating, what would you recommend to them, or what's some thoughts that you have?
Don't go in it for the wrong reasons. Okay. I mean, some would think it's a high earning profession. It's a high status in the society. When you're chasing these things, you end up over treating your patients. You end up greed playing a very important part and you see the high rise of these early graduates earning so much, and then it crashes so fast. And I think you have to go in it for the right purposes and cause. I think that's very, very important, because that's what's going to give you longevity. And always find a hero and a guider, somebody, some can provide you guidance, a mentor, if you will. I think that's very, very important. You
So
can't do
agree.
it alone. You can't do it blinded. I can't tell you how many mistakes and I was able to avoid just because somebody told me that was ahead of me, or somebody that was mentoring me that told me, just don't do it this way, do it that way. This is my experience. Maybe it can be, it just, I think that's very important to listen. Listening is a very, very important part. You know, uh, to this day, I'm always a student of the profession. I never think I've became anybody important, or a an opinion leader. I just don't like that. I think you're always listening. You're always learning, and then don't be selfish and share. share the mistakes. I'm not ashamed to say I failed and I was mistaken in this treatment plan or in the selection of this material or in this whatever it is. But I think sharing your errors and your failure and your mistakes is going to be very important. And to me, those are the presentations I love listening to. Are people who share their failure. I'm never the person who judges, but again, I try to learn and listen from that experience and try to avoid it. And because of the lack of clinical evidence and a lot of the things that we're doing in our modern day dentistry,
No
I
doubt.
think the only way we're going to be able to learn is by, sharing and also, sharing your failures and mistakes, and that will help the profession avoid falling into these mistakes, hopefully. And so again, things change and we have to adapt and change to them. But I think these are the most important things that made me. And again, I look at my two younger brothers and my sister, they're all, thriving in their areas, and I see their students around them and their passion for doing the same things that I do. It's just because we were mentored from the very beginning and doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's very, very important to ask yourself before going into dentistry and also before going into academia or going into your private practice is, what are the reasons am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve? And if you are in it for the right reasons, there's no doubt you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sum it up. I agree. Service, or well, this is a service profession. Anyone who thinks dentistry is not a service
Absolutely.
profession isn't doing it right. Find a great mentor or mentors. Uh, be willing to listen and to learn, like you said, and showing your mistakes. And the thing that I've encouraged so much for my proteges coming out of dental school and other young dentists is find a study club, find a group of like-minded
Absolutely.
dentists, and if you don't
Absolutely.
have one around you, just create one. Find a
Yes.
couple other dentists that you can sit down, and that's how our study club started. We started with
Absolutely.
four of us hanging out with some study models and just looking over cases. Now we've been in existence for 35 years or so, and
Unbelievable.
we bring
That's
in
beautiful.
people. Yeah, and it's grown and now it's much more formal, but it started out with four dentists sitting around a table sharing cases. And so it can be so isolating in dentistry. I'm fortunate I have a partner, we have an associate, so there's a few of us there, but solo practice is really, really, you know, it's hard. And then even
Sure.
if you're in a group practice, sometimes you can still feel very isolated. And so
Absolutely.
find a safe environment where you can be around like-minded dentists
100%.
and share.
100%.
And then go out
A
and
hundred.
learn and listen to people like Taiseer and
Yes.
these other people, great educators.
Absolutely.
Taiseer, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with myself and our audience.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's
It's
been a pleasure.
I love what you're doing. I love your style of presentation. You're very humble and you're very open and welcoming to comments and questions when you present, and you share great information. So
Thank you so much.
if they haven't found you, we'll have your contact information. And I look
Sure.
forward to seeing you in February when you're in Chicago for the restorative meeting.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much for having me, Dennis. I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Been great. Thanks so much, Cesar.
Thank you.